What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Saturdays in the SEC, episode 136. Back to recap week 10 of college football here in the SEC. Had some good matchups this weekend. Had a big upset with South Carolina Gamecocks over Texas A&M. South Carolina's thrown a wrench in the top of the SEC right now. It's going to be an absolutely wild November in the conference title races, not only in the SEC but around the country. The first playoff rankings of the season come out Tuesday night. It's going to be really interesting to see where teams are standing going into the final month of the season, which is hard to believe that we're in the final month of the regular season already. It's insane how quick it goes. Already finished with week 10, but we're going to get right into it and start with the 11 o'clock game in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and just got to lead with this. It was a great day to be Jackson Dart. It was a great day to be Jordan Watkins because they absolutely went off in Fayetteville. This stat line from Jackson Dart uh, is nothing short of insane. 25 of 31, 515 yards, 6 touchdowns, and no picks. I mean,
It's
hard to get
PlayStation numbers.
hard to get any better than that, man. I mean, he had an absolute video game type of day against this Arkansas defense. This one fooled me. I got to be honest with you. You know, we talked about last week. I liked, the points with Arkansas was 7.5. We've seen them obviously pull an upset against Tennessee this year. It's been a team that's been super competitive this year, and I thought their defense would do a better job against Ole Miss, but that just certainly wasn't the case. Jordan Watkins had a had an insane day. A Devontae Smith type of line that he had against Ole Miss at one time. 8 catches, 254 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I mean, that's
PlayStation numbers for real.
yeah. I mean, it's just an insane day at the yard for them and the entire Ole Miss offense. I mean, it was absolute clinic. I mean, this game was um, it was a game for the first quarter. Ole Miss absolutely turned it on in the second quarter with 28 points, and this game was out of reach at halftime, and they ended up cruising to a victory. But kind of what were your thoughts for this Ole Miss Arkansas game? And Ole Miss is looking really good before this matchup with Georgia this weekend.
I mean, the score really doesn't dictate how the game went. I mean, the game was over at halftime. The Arkansas scored 14 in the third quarter, but it was really all for naught because they were already down 30 something to 7 or 10 or whatever it was. So this game got out of hand quick. I mean, Lane Kiffin had his guys ready to go. Clearly, they're still buying there. They still believe there's still a chance for them. Not a fantastic chance, but there is still a chance. There's a vision there. So clearly, they're still bought into it. He's got them playing well. That was the biggest shock to me. Not necessarily that they beat them the way they did, but just how they were playing. Because I expect them to be at least, a few other guys not being 100% bought in, but that was not the case at all on Saturday. They looked really good, both sides of the football. Arkansas had no answer for them offensively, or Arkansas's defense had no answer for Ole Miss offensively the whole game. I mean, they pretty much did at will what they wanted to do. This looked like the early first 2-3 weeks of Ole Miss that we were seeing in the season. Just pretty much hit on all cylinders. Didn't miss a beat this week. Looked really, really good, playing with the hair on fire. And on the defense side of the ball, like I said, they pretty much dominated minus one quarter. The third quarter, you take that out of the equation, they win 17 to 63. Obviously, you can't take it out of the equation; it's part of the game. But the score doesn't really dictate just how well Ole Miss handled this game.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Ole Miss's defensive line too was really impressive in this game. Man, Arkansas had a really hard time blocking them up front. I mean, yeah, it was a dominant factor of the game for Ole Miss, and um, you know Taylor Green got a little banged up early in the game too. He's kind of been dealing with some injuries off and on this year a little bit, and
He's a dog, though. He's a dog.
yeah, he is. He is. He just it was a tough situation for him, like I said, with the offensive line matching up against this Ole Miss defensive front. That's really really good. We know how talented they are up front and the kind of guys they were able to bring in on that side of the ball. So that was really the biggest takeaway from me. Thought it could be a little bit more competitive, and kind of liked a lot of what I've seen out of Arkansas's defense this year, for stretches. But yeah, this game they just didn't really have any answers. And kind of talking about Ole Miss's chances. I mean, they're 7-2. I mean, they're very much in the playoff hunt. I mean, nothing is off the table yet. I mean, they're I feel like they're in the same boat with Alabama and LSU this weekend. Like all three of those teams need wins this weekend. Two of them
Mhm.
are going to get well, at least one's going to get eliminated, depending on what happens with Ole Miss and Georgia. But yeah, I mean they're all in the same boat. They need to win out. If they win out, they got a fairly good chance of making the playoffs. Especially with this
Well, if they
weekend.
win out, they're making the playoffs because they'll have beat Georgia for sure. They'll if they win out, but I just don't think they're getting past Georgia.
Yeah, I think with like I said, Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU, kind of all in the same boat. If they win out, great chance they're going to be in the playoffs. I think this weekend just solidified that much more.
Yeah,
Clemson getting their second loss in a surprising upset at home to Louisville. Iowa State losing at home. Kansas State, who was just behind some of these teams in the rankings, lost as well. So, A&M going down, they're getting their second loss, even though it was only one conference loss so far. But they've still got, some tough matchups remaining. So, um, yeah, I think, I mean, you just can't really write off anybody in the top, 16 or 17 right now because, I mean, there's so many big matchups to be decided. This is going to be a wild November. And to be honest, like if you get in this playoff, it's going to feel like Major League Baseball. Like it's going to be about who's getting hot at the right time
Mhm.
more so than necessarily who the best overall team is. Because I think when you look at 1 through 15, I just don't think there's a ton of separation
Right.
between there. I mean, who do you look at right now that's like, man, they are just head and shoulders above anybody. I mean, you'd have to say Oregon's probably played the best of anybody here lately. Just with a couple of the wins they have beaten Ohio State, they're still undefeated. But at the same time, you don't look at Oregon and go, man, that team's unbeatable.
Mhm.
Like I mean, they're I don't want to say very beatable, but I mean, I don't think there's
Gettable for
much
sure.
separation between
Yeah,
them and anybody else. I mean, you look at Georgia. I mean, if DJ, we're getting this, and man, I mean, if DJ Lagway stays healthy, man, Florida has a really good shot at that game.
yeah.
They've struggled at times this year. They've looked great at times against Texas. They struggled bad in the first half against Alabama. Some of their other games, Kentucky, in this game, they didn't really click very well. So, um, it's going to be really interesting down the stretch. I think a lot of the teams up there in the mix, I'm not writing off any of them for potentially making a run at a national title. I think it's too early to make those kind of calls, and I love that fact because it's going to make it super super interesting down the stretch.
Absolutely. I kind of want to get into the other game that kicked off in the morning slate for the SEC. I was in attendance again this week for the Auburn game. Went down to Auburn to watch them take on Vandy. And Auburn was a 6.5 point favorite. Opened up at 6.5, went down to 5.5, and then closed at 7.5. Auburn was a touchdown and some favorite. Um, I was shocked by that. If it would have happened, it wouldn't just blown me away. But I was definitely surprised that Vandy wasn't favored at all. I figured Vandy would be like a 3 or 4 point favorite coming into the game. Obviously, they weren't. Um, Proved that they should have been though. Defensively, they played really, really well. They caused problems for Auburn's offense all day. Auburn really couldn't find a groove. There's Auburn fans still complaining. Jarquez last week, you give him the ball for 23 times, his career high. He goes for 278 and 2 touchdowns. Clearly got stronger as the game went on, and as you kept handing the balls off consistently, back to back, 3 times in a row. He got stronger and stronger. Well, this week he goes for 12 carries, only touched it 2 or 3 times in the second half. Hugh Freeze said after the game that he thinks Jarquez was a little gassed. It's like I don't I don't think that's the case, but whatever. I just think it's a little ridiculous that you're not just feeding him the rock. It kind of felt like, how last week I said earlier in the year, if they would hand the ball off and get like a 1 or 2 yard gain, they would just abandon it completely. It seemed like it went back to that this week. Auburn would get a 1, 2 yard gain, they'd abandon the run game completely, throw it the next 2 downs, and end up punting it away. So it just got a little frustrating of why they aren't landing on the run game because just because it doesn't work one single snap doesn't mean it's not going to work the rest of the drive. I don't know. It's a little frustrating. Um, Defense, man, DJ Durkin deserves a lot better offense to help him out because he and his defense, as young as they are, they're not out there playing like they look like freshmen. They're not. They're playing well above what they were expected to this year as being so young. The core, early on, or the starters, the core is a majority older guys, but a lot of the guys that are rotating and playing a lot of the snaps is really young guys. So they're playing extremely well. Held Vandy under their average for the every game this year. Held Pavia under his total rushing or his average rushing yards, average passing yards, things along those lines. Played really, really well. Just couldn't get any help offensively, and then they shot themselves in the foot 3 or 4 times again with penalties. Third down, there's 3 of them that I can count that happened in the second half when it was 10-7, I believe it was at the time, 10-7, and yes, it was 10-7 at the time. In the fourth quarter, and Auburn has a penalty that extends the drive for them. Then they have another penalty that extends the drive for them, and then it's 3rd and 6 or 7. Auburn makes the stop. Me, who's about 7 or 8 beers deep at the time, sitting in the stands and sitting there counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm counting them 4 or 5 times. I'm like, I've been drinking a little bit. I'm in the stands for a reason. I'm counting like, we've got 12 guys on the field. We've got 12 guys on the field. We've got 12 guys on the field. Hollering. We've got 12 guys on the field. About 10 seconds goes by. They snap the ball. Auburn stops them. Penalty flag. Too many men on the field. Fresh set of downs. 3 plays later, I believe it was 3 plays later, they go down and score a touchdown. I'm like, just giving it to them. And like, why am me, doesn't know nothing about nothing in the stands, hollering out, we got 12 guys on the field, and nobody on the sidelines or on the field is acting like they know what the hell is going on. That is inexcusable. The things like that, it just drives you nuts. Then the leverage call from the referees, I got a problem with that call, number one. Not just with Auburn. I've seen it happen to a couple of teams this year that it's absolutely BS to me. I've seen it called where a guy will jump over and his fingertips will barely touch the offensive lineman that he's jumping over for the field goal, and they won't call it. And then I've seen the exact same thing happen where they'll barely touch him and it gets called. And then I've seen some where like the guy's hands are clearly on the guy's shoulder pads, but he's not using them to lift up. He's just barely touching him to go over, and they don't call it. But I'll see them call it sometimes. So it's not it's like up to the discretion of the referees is what it seems like. I feel like that one needs to be laid out a little bit more of exactly what you're looking for. If it would have affected the play, I get it. Hugh Freeze definitely let the refs know about that one. But I mean, Eli Stowers again and Diego Pavia just causing heartbreak for the Auburn fans. Those 2 guys, man, they're a tandem that's tough to beat. He's a tight end. He seems like he's always open. It's a lot like Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes-ish, because obviously he'll run his route, but him and Diego have been playing together so long, they're on the same page that he'll break away from his route and go where he needs to get open, and Diego knows where to look for him every time. And they play so well together. But yes, the Vanderbilt's defense, you got to take your hats off to them. They were playing extremely well, very, very sound defense. And Auburn's offense couldn't get anything going. It was very frustrating, but again, Auburn had the opportunities there. They couldn't seize the opportunity, and they couldn't get out of their own way at times on the defense side of the ball. But again, it is definitely 1,000% not the defense's fault. Um, it's more magnified when it's in the big moments like that. And it's a close game, and there's a chance there, and then you shoot yourself in the foot. So it's more magnified. But I don't think those are the reasons that Auburn lost. They just couldn't get anything going on offense, and it wasn't Peyton's fault. Peyton, he actually looked good the other day. He was like 20 for 26 or something like that. 20 for 29, 239, and a touchdown, no interceptions. I mean, he didn't look terrible. He made some questionable decisions on some third downs that stalled some drives, but he wasn't the reason Auburn lost this week. This one to me goes right back to Oklahoma. All coaching, 1,000%. We're tired of hearing the same BS in the post game pressers from Hugh Freeze. If you say you're going to change it, change it. Don't just change it for one game and then go back to the same old, same old. It's really frustrating. I think the same thing happened with Tank. I think when Tank was there, Jarquez took away carries from Tank that he shouldn't have, and now that Tank's not there, Jarquez is getting carries taken away from him, from Damari and Jeremiah, that he shouldn't be getting taken away from, in my opinion. But however, again, defense played their ass off. Both defenses really did. It was a low-scoring game. I told you, pick last week. We like the under in this game, so that hit. If you rode that, congratulations. You had some money in your bank. But all in all, man, Vandy, they're the real deal, man. They're not the Vandy of old for sure. We've known that since they beat Alabama, and then they played Texas really well last week. I mean, they just played fundamentally sound football, and they didn't make mistakes. It was that simple.
Yeah, I mean, I thought a big key in this game. I mean, neither team was great on third down, but Auburn was 2 of 13 on third down. It's not going to cut it. Kind of going back and looking the season as a whole, they've scored 56 points combined at home against Cal, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and now Vandy. That was four home games. I believe, yeah. So 4 of the 5 home games, not counting New Mexico, but the last 4 Power 5 opponents you played at home, you score 56 points in 4 games. That's just not going to cut it. Your defense held Cal to 21, and you had like 5 turnovers.
Yep.
Arkansas game, you held them to 24. You had a bunch of turnovers that game. You know, Oklahoma, you had a lead, blew that one. This game, obviously, turnovers weren't an issue, but you couldn't convert on third down. You held them to 17 ultimately. Wasn't like Vandy. I know that's got to be a frustrating part of it, too. It's like you're losing a game when the other team, it's not like they're lighting it up either.
Right.
Like that wasn't their
Right.
A game necessarily. And, you only score 7 points, you lose at home. I mean, those are just really disheartening and frustrating. Like you said with Jarquez, only getting 12 carries. Hugh Freeze, only got 2 carries in the second half. His last carry was with 11 minutes to go in the third quarter, which is crazy.
Inexcusable, man.
I know he said he was gassed, but it's like, man, you're going into a bye week. And I mean, this is really your shot to have a chance to make a bowl game. I mean, now they have to beat A&M and Alabama to go to a bowl.
Yep.
Like
They're
this
not
was
going
your
bowl this year.
yeah, this was your opportunity though, and going into a bye week, I just like you said, I thought they should have leaned on him some more. I mean, 12 carries. I mean, unless he's really banged up or something, like you got to give him the ball more than that. So, but yeah, I just thought just couldn't extend drives. You go 2 of 13 on third downs. You're not able to sustain drives like you want to. Your defense is out there a lot, and they did a good job. Like they gave you every opportunity to win the game, and just couldn't do it. I mean that's disheartening too when you got an offensive coach. Your offense is the one letting you down. That's what's really I think frustrating for a lot of folks. And but yeah, I mean some of those young guys are really playing well, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean,
Well,
really impressive. I mean they've been very, very solid.
and then Towns Magoo, man, just continues to struggle. It's getting ridiculous. I have some insider information, not gonna say the reference, but just know the reference knows Alex McPherson personally. Potentially may or may not have coached him in the past. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but he does know Alex McPherson personally, and apparently Alex McPherson has been kicking at practice for a month. He kicked last week. The reports are being said it's because of his stomach issue, his disease he's been battling. He's been under 90, he's under 100 pounds a while back, but he's been kicking. According to this reference, he's been kicking for a month in practice, and he told Hugh Freeze this week, "Play me or I'm out of here." And Hugh Freeze didn't play him. So I'm being told to expect Alex McPherson to enter the transfer portal. I know it's just a kicker. It's not that big of a deal, but I am being told that from a very reputable source that Alex McPherson is probably not going to be wearing the orange and blue for the Auburn Tigers next season.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, man, because he's a really good talent. I mean, it's hurt him a lot this year. I mean, there's some results
Big
that
time.
would be different if he was out there at 100%. You
Yep.
said you said he had gotten under 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know if it was like recent, but I know since the season started, he was under 100 pounds at some point. I cannot remember what the disease is called, but it's essentially something like gastrointestinal issues. And he was like not basically not able to keep food down and not able to be like He wasn't getting the nourishment he needed because he was so sick and stuff. So and he was already not a big guy, but yeah, he got under 100 pounds within the last few months.
That's crazy. I've actually heard someone with that kind of issue before. They couldn't keep food down or anything for
Yeah,
like
yeah,
days on the end. So yeah,
yeah.
I have heard of something like that. That's crazy though that he got that small. Like for a college athlete being under 100 pounds, that's
Yeah, it
crazy
is.
to think about, honestly. So
It is
yeah,
insane.
so
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I trust the source that I was told that by. So maybe Towns Magoo can figure out in the off season. Drove by, he had a picture. He was got an NIL deal with Metro, the shipping company. He had or something like that. It had the billboard on it this weekend. I said, "Get that billboard out of here, dude. Get him a practice field. Jesus, it's bad, dude. It's
hope he
bad.
doesn't
It's
get the
bad. It's
Cade
bad.
Foster treatment down there, man.
It is. I think Auburn fans would pay lots of money for Cade Foster right now. Is what I'm saying, dude.
Man,
It is. It
that's
is.
bad. Then
It's not like they're asking him to go out there and kick 58 to 60 yarders consistently, and he's missing them. The dude is shanking 35-yard field goals and missing them by like three field goals. You know what I'm saying? Like three field
yeah,
goals, three uprights. He's missing them by that far left or right. I'm like,
he's missing them
what are
like
you doing during practice? What do you do? There's no way you're kicking that whole time because this is ridiculously bad. Like bad.
he's missing them like Andy Papanostas in that championship game, man.
Dude.
Man, hey, 35 yarder to literally write your name in crimson
Corner of the end
glory,
zone.
dude. Like literally, dude. He could have been just think he could have done nothing else and made that one kick and never had to buy another meal in Tuscaloosa the rest of his life. Now nobody even knows who the guy even is, man.
Yep.
I mean, that one kick could change his whole life.
Oh,
And he shanked
100%.
it by like a mile. At which, I mean, obviously, which is crazy to think if the dude would have just hit a 35-yard field goal, 2nd and 26, never happens. Which
Yeah.
is it's crazy to think about. It's crazy how one thing can change a lot, but yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Yeah, he shanked it, and now he's a used car salesman somewhere. I guess I don't know, but
And I don't
it's
want to
unfortunate. I wish it would have saved everybody a lot of stress if he'd have just hit it. But regardless, yeah, gotta hopefully gets it going. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's mental, man. It seems that way with kickers. Like he can kick the football, but it's just like, man, the confidence in kicking, especially, is such a big thing, man. Like
Oh yeah.
he just doesn't look like a confident kicker right now. I
No,
mean,
not at all. He's struggling mightily. That's for sure. It's frustrating, but I don't want that to sound like I'm taking away from Vanderbilt because they played really well. Like I said, they played very, very sound on the defensive side of the football. They got off the field. They had forced a lot of 3-and-outs. I mean, they did really well, played extremely well. You know, hats off to them. They're a damn good football team, and they'll be bowling this year for sure. Auburn's taking their place, sitting at home on the couch watching everybody else go bowling. So there's another game. You know, we talked about Arkansas, Ole Miss. The scoreboard really didn't dictate how the game played out. Another game that was like that, even more so, was Georgia and Florida. Man, I mean, late in the game, Georgia was able to come away with it off some turnovers and some friendly field position. But when they were asked to drive, when they were starting on their own side of the field and asked to drive down to the end zone, Georgia just could not do it. Carson Beck has thrown 11 interceptions in his last 5 games. That is insane. He threw 6 interceptions all of last year, and then through 4 weeks this year, he'd thrown 7. Um, Back-to-back weeks that he's thrown 3 interceptions. He's also the first ever SEC player to throw have back-to-back weeks of 3 interceptions or more and win those games. Actually, he's the second one, according to the graphic that was thrown up on the screen. But man, Georgia did find a way, and they figured it out and came away with the win in the end. But you are 100% right, what you alluded to earlier. Man, if DJ Lagway does not get hurt, Georgia is in some trouble this game. I thought we would see, the same Georgia that we saw against Texas coming out with their hair on fire because they know what this game means, a big rivalry game. They're staring down potentially going to the playoffs this year, and this could hurt if they lost this game. So I thought they'd be 100% locked in. And defensively, they were. I'll say, but Lagway, he definitely gave him some problems. And the cat that came in, Warner from, I believe he transferred in from Yale
Yeah.
from his name, Aiden Warner. He actually played really well considering the circumstances. His stat line doesn't look fantastic, but he was able to piece drives together here and there. They just weren't always able to come away with points, but he did not look terrible, honestly. But the way that their offense is needing to run to be successful, you got to have Lagway in there, be able to run the ball a little bit. Once that threat was taken away, Georgia was able to pin their ears back a little bit. Man, offensively, I don't know what Carson Beck is dealing with this year. I know he doesn't have the same star-studded roster as he did last year. We were talking about guys that are making an impact in the NFL as rookies this year, but it's not like he's playing with UTSA's roster or something. I mean, the man, it's still 4 and 5 stars he's throwing the ball to and who's protecting him. He just looks like a completely different quarterback, man. But it's not all game. It's in spurts, like the Alabama game. The first half, he looked miserable. In the second half, he looked like a Heisman candidate. And then
Yeah.
there was drives in this game where he looked miserable again. And then there was drives in this game where he pieced together and built a drive that looked really good. You're like, damn, that's a first round quarterback. But then the next drive he trot out there, and you're like, that's a undrafted quarterback. Working his way trying to sign
Is.
through rookie
Yeah.
deals. You know what I mean? It's just I don't know what it is. Obviously I don't have the answer. But Kirby, I don't know. Obviously, him and Stetson are different. But I was talking one of our good friends, Bradley, big Georgia fan. I was talking to him earlier this week, and he's like, "Man, I don't know, but you watch the way that Kirby would coach Stetson when he came off the field and on the sidelines, and the way he coaches Carson Beck. He's like, man, it's completely different. He's like, I understand they're two different players. He's like, but it seems like Kirby's so soft with Carson Beck, so that makes you wonder, well, is Carson Beck not a mental midget, but does he have some mental issues that he's trying to overcome and some mental hurdles he's trying to overcome that he wasn't having to have last year because they were so good and so dominant? It makes you wonder for sure, but Kirby definitely is not coaching him the same, but it seems like Carson Beck is trying to force things to happen at times instead of allowing them to come to him. But Georgia's defense stepped up late in the game. They forced some turnovers and they got Georgia some short fields that allowed Georgia to punch it in and extend the lead and then take over the game really late in the game. But obviously, no one's surprised about Georgia's defense. But Florida, they're hats off to them. They're playing well. I'm friends with some Florida fans and they're not really happy with Napier right now. But what I've tried to tell them, I know it's a lot easier when you're not a fan and you're looking at it from just regular college football fan lens, is I don't think Billy Napier should get fired, man, because he was expected to be the butt of the SEC. He was expected to be what Auburn and Mississippi State is this year, and he has well exceeded what he's supposed to do. And I know they don't want to hear, well, we're that close, we're competing. I know one of my buddies, he said, Florida isn't expected to compete. Florida is expected to win and dominate. Like that is what Florida was built on. That's the brand that they're trying to push. I was like, yes, I get that, but you were expected to be the drain of the SEC, and you're actually here competing with the teams that are in the top of the SEC. You're there, man. You're getting there. And then they're saying his recruiting's not great. I'm like, man, I like Napier. I think Napier. I said he wasn't going to go trick or treating in Gainesville. I was wrong. I'll eat my words on that for sure. I was 100% wrong. Man, I think he's going to be back next year. I don't see why there's any reason to get rid of him, especially with the injury bug he's been dealt this season. And the man, like we talked about, he had the hardest roster in all of college football. And he's actually maneuvered it pretty well. I mean, they're 4-4. He's sitting at 500. If you'd have told me after Halloween Florida was going to be 500, I'd have laughed in your face. Told you, no, you don't know anything. So I think Napier is going to stay. Some Florida fans may not be happy about that, but I think the product in the future is going to be much different than what we're seeing right now. You can see it coming together. I think that he's going to find it next year. Maybe not national championship or anything, but they're going to be much better next year. After Lagway's got a full season under his belt, he's going to be 100% the guy throughout the offseason. I think it would be beneficial for Florida to keep Napier instead of get rid of him. I know there's some mixed emotions there. I just don't see any reason to run him off now.
I just feel like we're really robbed in this game. I mean, with Lagway going down, and I
Yeah.
think regardless of what you think the result would be if he'd have stayed healthy, I mean, obviously we'll never know the answer to that. But I do think, regardless of the way this result would have ended up, I think Florida would have had the chance to really make some noise down the stretch, potentially run some playoff hopes. Um, they got LSU and Ole Miss at home coming up here in the final month of the season. They go at Texas this week. think if Lagway stays healthy, I think there's a real. I think there's a possibility they could have run some playoff chances potentially, depending on what happens with LSU and Ole Miss. Um, those could be dashed this week. We'll see. Obviously, with some huge matchups for those teams this week, but yeah, I mean, you could see they were right there. They were really competing. They've had some good results lately, and Lagway was looking really good. Man, it's so unfortunate with his hamstring injury. That's They'll sideline him the rest of the year, I believe, and hopefully he'll recover enough to have a kind of a normal off season. Would be nice because you could really see it coming together. I think you summed it up perfectly though with Carson Beck. I mean, he's just made some horrible decisions in spurts. I mean, you look at the interceptions from this game. I mean, they're just bad plays. I mean, they were just forcing the ball when there's no play to be made. I mean, throwing in double and triple coverage. I'm like, man, just not decisions you see from multi-year starting quarterbacks. I
Right.
mean, that have played the level of football that he has played, and yeah, it's crazy. Like you said, it's a lot of it in spurts, like in a quarter or two, like you just see multiple just almost boneheaded type of
Yeah.
decisions. And then it's like he'll for a few drives, man, bam, bam. I mean, he's just firing down the field. Um, but yeah, I mean, this was a guy that was supposed to be the strength
Yeah.
of a national championship contending team, and
Potential
and
number
with
one overall pick coming
and
into the
with
season.
and with these turnovers, he looks like the weakness of
Yeah.
a national championship contending team. I mean, when you make this many turnovers, I mean they're crippling for your team's chances, and they're the big reason these games have been close. I mean, fortunately, the defense was amazing against Texas. That could have been a lot different. The
Hmm.
first half against Alabama, if he plays better, they have a much better chance to win that game. So yeah, he's been bad, not the entire season or not for entire games necessarily, but there's been several drives or several quarters within some of these games where he's just been playing bad football, making bad decisions, and it's really put Georgia in a tough position in a lot of these games. So, um, I mean, obviously you see it still in there. Um, and I mean, there's a good chance he could really get it fixed down the stretch and be hot, or there's a chance it could continue. I think, depending on how he plays, I think it's gonna be, the deciding factor in how far Georgia goes, and do they have a legitimate chance to win the national title. If he's turned the football over like this, they very likely won't. But if he can rectify that, um, I think they got as good a chance as anybody. But got a tough test this week against Ole Miss. This is a really good defensive front right now. Um, so yeah, it's going to be a great game Saturday. But if he's got the turnover bug like he's been having, Ole Miss is going to have a great chance to win that game. But yeah, just felt like we were robbed a little bit. Would have loved to have seen Lagway the rest of this game to see how it panned out. But I think it would have been a great opportunity for him the rest of the way, and I think they would have had a chance in some of these upcoming games to make some noise against some of these teams.
I tell you something we weren't robbed on though was that South Carolina game. We both liked South Carolina last week. We liked them to stay, keep it close. We both said we liked them plus 2.5. I ended up taking 2.5, and I live bet them in the first quarter at plus 8 or minus 8.5. So I won both of those bets. Thank you to the Gamecocks. But you go back and you look at South Carolina, and people are like, "Man, South Carolina beat the number 10 team in the country," and you're like, "Well, you pump the brakes a little bit." They lost by 3 to LSU. LSU had a great final drive to come back. I believe that was the only time they led in the game was when they scored the final touchdown. So you got to think that they played that game extremely well. They had a chance to tie against Alabama with a 2-point conversion late in the game, and a chance to win it against Alabama late in the game. Only lost by 2 there, and then they come on and they face South Carolina or they face Texas A&M, and then they just dominate Texas A&M, and people are like, 2-loss South Carolina teams dominating an SEC contender for a championship, or 3-loss, excuse me, because they got handled by Ole Miss. But you're like, people look at the records and just say, "Oh, well, that team shouldn't have any business beating the number one team in the SEC." And the recipes were there. We talked about it, man. Their defensive front, their line, Kyle Kennard, what was the other guy's name?
Dylan
Uh,
Stewart,
Dylan Stewart. I mean, they're just
they're
the way
dogs,
they've
man.
been playing all year, and just South Carolina's defense as a whole. But their defensive linemen, they're so good, they're so dominant. They get to the quarterback pretty much with relative ease. Allows you to do a lot more defensively in the defensive backfield when you can get guys getting pressure without having to bring blitzes all the time. But man, South Carolina looked good. Had a chance to go up 21-3 early and pretty much put the nail in the coffin before halftime even hit. Throw a little screen pass to Rocket Sanders. Rocket Sanders makes a really good play and ends up fumbling when he gets tackled. That gives Texas A&M the shot in the arm they needed. They end up going down, driving down, scoring, stop them, drop down, score again, and it becomes a tie. They take the lead. South Carolina kicks a field goal, ties it up before halftime, and then the second half, Texas A&M couldn't do anything, and they didn't put up a single point offensively. They were, I mean, scratching their heads all night. South Carolina ran the ball at will all over this team. Lenore Sellers had 100 yards rushing himself. And then Rocket Sanders had 144 rushing yards himself. So they ran for damn near 300 yards.
Yeah,
He threw for another 245 with 2 touchdowns. They could do no wrong. Rocket Sanders, he ran the ball extremely well. The offensive front for the offensive line for South Carolina looked really good. I mean, they gave Lenore Sellers plenty of time in the pocket all night long. There was no answer that Texas A&M had. Offensively, I felt like they relied on the run a little too much, and Marcel couldn't quite do it with his arm, which we talked about, last week. That could be a question mark coming into the game. Obviously, he threw it way more than 2 times this week. He was 18 for 28 for 206. Not a bad night, but you weren't going to rely on his arm to win you the football game. And South Carolina was doing a really good job stifling the run game, keeping them, from those explosive plays. Obviously, guys like that are going to get their yards, but keeping them from the explosive plays only held them to 140 something yards of rushing. Or they only allowed 140 something yards rushing, only 1 touchdown. So I thought that South Carolina, man, they played out of their minds. They looked really, really good, and they are much better than their record shows. Lenore Sellers is finally, coming into his, having his coming of age as being an SEC quarterback. Was his first year being, the real starter. Now he's got 7 or 8, actually probably more like 10 or 11 games under his belt playing college football. So he's no longer the freshman or the first year starting quarterback that you see. We're seeing him come into his own, and man, he looks really, really good. They're going to be a problem next year. They really are. A lot of their guys on defense are young. But pretty much a flawless football game. Outside of the fumble in the second quarter, they played pretty much flawless. Because when it was tied up, I was like, man, they just let Texas A&M right back in this game. They gave them everything they needed to do for Texas A&M to win this game. Texas A&M might take this away from them. But, hats off to them. South Carolina kept swinging. They kept swinging, kept fighting. And they came out in the second half, and they put their foot on the gas. And defensively, man, they tightened up, and A&M could not do anything. They couldn't get anything going, couldn't catch passes. I mean, they couldn't block nobody to get even a push on the running game. So South Carolina looked incredible in the second half, and they handled business. Being at home, man, that I would have loved to have been at that game, man. You could feel the atmosphere radiating through yourself through the TV. Man, it was such a good environment. The rally towels or whatever they call them down there in Williams-Brice, it looked so cool. It sounded, you know what I'm saying? Like that place was rocking. And they took it to the #1 team in the SEC. Now the field is pretty much evened out in the SEC, the top 5, 6 teams. So it's going to be a fun end of the season, like you said, fun into November. This was the first games in November. We still got 3 more weekends in November for crazy stuff to happen. So, man, this has been a great college football season. But this game right here was one of my most fun games all Saturday, just because I like Shane Beamer a lot. He gets a lot of slack, and he gets a lot of hates from people because of how he handles some things in the media and how he goes about some things. I really like the guy. He took over a program that was in the slums. He's never been a head coach in his life, and he has built this thing brick by brick. His first ever season, I think they won 3 games, something like that, 3 or 4 games. They were not good. He inherited a boo-boo roster, and he has built this thing for, like, him getting Lenore Sellers, like a guy like that to come in there. People are buying into his vision. The kids are buying into his vision. They're going to be a problem. they're going to be back to the relevance of when Steve Spurrier was there. That's the only time they've ever been relevant in my lifetime. He's going to bring it back to that. They're going to be competing for championships, not every single year, but he keeps getting guys like this in his recruiting classes and able to get some guys to the portal like Rocket Sanders and people like that, and plugs and pieces he needs. This is the team that's going to shock some people next year in the SEC. I'm telling you right now, I have a lot of faith in Shane Beamer and Lenore Sellers and company. Big fan of them, but hats off to them. The everything's still in front of Texas A&M. The season's not over. That's their first SEC loss. So SEC championship game, they're still atop the SEC. It's all in front of them. But this was a big wake up call that they needed. But man, great game by the Gamecocks. Great job by Shane Beamer. Played a pretty much flawless game of football.
Yeah, I mean, it's really impressive. Man, I mean, Rocket Sanders has had a great college career. This is about as good, maybe the best I've ever seen him.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people feel that way, man. He was outstanding in this game. Lenore Sellers was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be honest with you. A&M had a hell of a time getting those two on the ground. I
Yeah.
mean, they had a hell of a time. They had a hard time doing that. They were chasing a Lenore Sellers around all night. I mean, there was a couple of times he shook 4 or 5 guys off of him. And there was one play in particular, he got out of a sack.
When he
There
rolled
was
to the
about
right.
Yes, there was
Yes.
about 4 or 5 dudes that should have had him down, and he shook out of that and pulled his way out of there, threw the ball away. But I was like, it was those type of plays instead of it being a 6, 7 yard loss. It
Yep.
was 2nd and 10 versus
Yep.
2nd and 17. It was
Yeah,
just
he had a guy around his legs and a guy up top on his shoulder pads, and the guy went over the top of him and tried to bring him down. He basically just shook straight out of it. It was like it's one of the craziest plays I've seen for sure by a quarterback.
it kind of reminded me of last year. You heard Nick Saban talk about Terrion Arnold comes in to sack KJ Jefferson when we played Arkansas at home. And he said, I've never seen a major college football player another high major college football player off like he did. It was like a horse or was it a gnat on a horse's ass or something like that. That was Lenore Sellers against A&M, man.
Yeah.
I mean, just shaking them off like gnats off a horse's ass, scrambling out, throwing the ball away or tucking it and running. I mean, Rocket Sanders, you mentioned too, man. I mean, what do you have, 144 yards on the ground?
Yeah. And then
He
he caught
added
4 or 5 balls too.
for 92 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, this dude had 230 yards all
All purpose.
purpose. I
Yeah.
mean, insane, man. I mean, he looked as good or better than anybody's ever seen him. I mean, it's a career game, I'm sure, for him. I don't know exactly what his career rushing and total yardage numbers were. That's got to be up near the top, if not the top. I do think too, South Carolina's coming off a bye week,
Mm-hmm.
having a whole week. Unlike LSU did, Marcel Reed get thrown in there. I think that really surprised LSU. They didn't look prepared for that. I think South Carolina looked much more prepared, knowing Marcel Reed was going to be the guy. I think having that bye week, like I said last week, I just did not like this spot for A&M. It was a classic spot to have this type of performance. I didn't think it would be this bad, but A&M is a really good team, but they got their flaws too, just like a lot of other teams do in this
Right.
country. So, man, I tell you what, the SEC race, man, it's like the Kentucky Derby, man. The SEC, the horses are coming out of turn 3, and we're fanned out 6 wide. Who's going to take it down the stretch here?
Right.
I mean, we're getting ready to come down the front stretch, the final month of the season, and the total SEC is up in the air with 5 or 6, jockeying for position. It's going to be awesome, man. I mean, South Carolina, they throw a big wrench into everything. I mean, I love it. You got A&M still there with 1 loss or 1 conference loss. Georgia with 1 conference loss. Tennessee with 1 conference loss. Texas with 1 conference loss. LSU with 1 conference loss. You got Ole Miss and Alabama right there with 2 conference losses, along with Vandy, who can throw some wrenches in this whole thing. I mean, Ole Miss is playing Georgia this week. Alabama's going on the road to LSU. I mean, What if they both win? I mean, then we got sure enough chaos. So it's going to be a ton of fun here down the
Absolutely.
stretch, man. Just stay tuned into it. But yeah, huge night for South Carolina. Um,
And hate
defense,
seeing Le'Veon Moss go down, man. He had a brutal injury. What it looked like, I mean, two big time athletes running at full speed did against each other 15, 20 miles an hour and then slamming into each other at full speed. It didn't look good. Defenseman, defensive back went down low to make the tackle, kind of hit him right in the shins. I mean, from full speed to dead stop. I'm not sure what he hurt. I was at a place watching it. I was at a bar watching it, so I couldn't hear what was being said. I just saw what happened, and it looked really, really, really gruesome. I don't know if it was a knee injury, a leg injury, an ankle injury, something like that. But he was out for the rest of the game. It seems to me like it was pretty serious because damn near half the team went into the injury tent to check on him. I mean, they were checking the capacity that thing could hold. I mean, you had Wigman going in there. You had Marshall Reed going in there. You had one of the offensive linemen going there. You had one of the defensive linemen going in there. I mean, everybody was going in there to check on him. So that's something you hate to see. Hope full recovery for him. But obviously, that's a big loss to them if he's not going to be able to play the rest of the year. Excuse me. Big part of their offense. Really, really good playmaker. Really dynamic player. Can run the ball well. Catch the balls in the backfield really well. So hate to see him get hurt. Um, but speaking of the Kentucky Derby, I want to go down to Tennessee where they face Kentucky. And before we get into the game, I want to take a second to apologize to the Kentucky fans for last week. You know, I said I was disappointed in the Kentucky fans. I was disappointed, but I did not realize last weekend. I did realize it, but I didn't take it into account. Keeneland is a racetrack in Kentucky. It's right across. It's a horse racetrack right across the street from the Kentucky campus. It's called Keeneland. It's one of the bigger ones, kind of like the Kentucky Derby. But the races were going on there last weekend too, so a lot of people were at the races. A lot of people went to the races and then came over to the game. So that's the reason that why it filled up so late. So I will need to go to a game there when there is not a race going on that weekend, a horse race is going on that weekend, so I can give an honest account. So I do want to apologize for that. Didn't realize the horse races were going on that weekend. People were going to both. So that could have played a part in why it took so long for the stadium to fill up. But with that being said, Auburn beat Kentucky extremely handily last week. So I expected Tennessee being at home night game for them to just dominate them. And that was not the case. This Kentucky team, hats off to Mark Stoops. They don't quit. They're still there. They're still fighting. They have not given up at all. They played their ass off this week. Had a chance to win the game there at one point. Scored a late touchdown to bring it with 23-18, I believe it was, or 22-18, something along those lines. And Tennessee was able to drive back down to score, and then that was pretty much all she wrote. But I this Tennessee team, I tell you what, I've been high on them all year. I had them as number 4 team in the SEC in our preseason rankings, if you remember that. At the time, not many people had them there, and you were like, "Oh, okay, you got them that high." I think you had them at 5. I had them at 4, so we were high on them. But this is the biggest set of pretenders I have ever seen in quite some time. If they make the playoffs this year, they are going to get bounced in the first round. I don't know how you can be so good. What are they, 8-1 or 7-1? I don't know how you can be so good and look so dominant, but also look like you have no idea what's going on offensively at times. I mean, it seems like to have all the star power they have on offense and the ability to take the top off of defense pretty much at will. I know Nico's still struggling with some deeper throws. When it gets to the intermediate to deeper throws in the passing game, he kind of struggles a little bit. But still, it's frustrating and it makes you scratch your head. It's like you're supposed to be this dominant team. We've seen you in flashes, but you can't consistently do it, especially against a team that you're much more superior than. I understand, like we've talked about over and over on this podcast, the gaps from the 3-6 teams to the 7-1, 8-0 teams are much smaller than they've ever been. But this Kentucky team should not have been on the field with this Tennessee team. And they took them down to the wire and made Tennessee fans a little, they were a little nervous there towards the end of the game. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying Kentucky's a horrible team or anything, but if Tennessee's going to do what everybody's expecting them to do, they're going to have to figure some things out because this, like I said, from what I've seen the last few weeks, they look like the biggest set of pretenders in college football so far. Like, I think Notre Dame would beat this Tennessee team right now.
yeah, I expected more, offensive explosion out of Tennessee this year. I mean, so far, I think this might just kind of be who they are offensively. I mean, they're legit defensively. I still think there's time to for them to really get it clicking. I thought there were some good throws Nico made. They dropped, didn't make plays on, just little things here and there. Um, I mean, yeah, they definitely got to get clicking a little bit better if they want to make a run in the playoffs. I mean, I agree with what you say. I mean, I think right now, like if that kind of offensive play continues, I think that's ultimately what would happen. But I
Right.
do think there is
That's what
time
I'm
for
saying.
them
Yeah.
to turn it on a little bit. I mean, obviously that Georgia game's huge. I mean, you look at their schedule, got a good inside track to be sitting at 10-2 at least at the end of the regular season, and that would you know, and they got the head to head over Alabama. So if Alabama's sitting there at 10-2 as well, you know, um, that's a nice feather in the cap to have there. So um, yeah, I mean they definitely got to improve offensively, be a little bit more explosive. But I
But
think
they got
this
to end the
Tennessee,
season with Vandy too. That ain't gonna be
yeah,
no slouch.
no, that's not gonna be a slouch either. For sure. I mean that's one thing. That's one thing you got to learn this season. Don't pin in too many victories for teams because you
Yeah.
use a pencil. Don't use a pen because I'm telling you, man, it's wild as we've seen so far. So, but yeah, I think fairly favorable down the stretch. I mean, obviously a couple tough road games, but um, yeah, I mean, I think there's still time for them to turn it on a little bit. But yeah, I think the current version, offensively, is not going to get it done against some of the top teams. Um, but yeah, Dylan Sampson, I mean, absolute beast. Receivers got to be a little bit better. But yeah, I was wrong on this one. I really thought coming out of the bye, being at home, I thought they'd be able to turn
Me
it up
too.
on this Kentucky
Me
team a
too.
little bit. They ran the ball good, just like Auburn ran it good on Kentucky. But they just weren't able to pull away like I expected. I mean, like you said, though, hats off to Kentucky. I mean, they're still battling. They're having a bad season, but they're still hanging in there. And I think that's just who this Tennessee team is right now. They're winning games. They're a good team, but they're just not winning with style points, maybe like you would expect a Tennessee offense to do. But they're still winning games. There's still a chance for
Right.
them to get it going offensively, like we know they're capable of. And I think it's in there, but we'll just remains to be seen if they really get it into high gear. But they're doing what they need to do, winning football games, and got a huge game against Georgia here in less than 2 weeks, and that'll tell us a lot more about them as well.
Absolutely. And then going into next week, speaking of Georgia, probably the biggest game outside of Alabama LSU, just because of the implications on the Alabama LSU game. Uh, Georgia and Ole Miss. Um, if Ole Miss can win this game, like you said earlier, there you can almost, well, like you said, write it in pencil, but you can pencil them into the playoffs if they can win this game. Um, and the way Georgia's been playing, you can say that there's a chance, but this is, man, Georgia's a 2.5 point favorite over the team, or excuse me, the game total is 54.5. These are the type of games where Georgia will come out and just play like an absolutely flawless game of football and win by 2 or 3 touchdowns. A game where a week after they come off of a sloppy performance where they don't look like themselves and everybody's like, oh, well, they're down and this Ole Miss team just looked really good. And this is the place, this is the spot where Kirby gets the most out of his team every time. He can use the way he motivates in situations like this is like no other. So in this game, I know Georgia, I believe, is 1-6 against the spread this year. Um, and that one being against Texas, I think this is a game just like Texas. They're not going to be they are going to be locked in for 4 quarters, no doubt about it. This is not a game you have to get your guys amped up for and you have to get on their ass during practice all week to focus in. I like Georgia to cover the spread. I like Georgia to win this game. We've seen other defenses that are not even close to the talent and ability that Georgia has hold this Ole Miss team to under 20 points or right at 20 points and giving them problems all game. I think this Georgia defense is going to have Jackson Dart seeing ghost. Uh, I like Georgia to win this game big, but I definitely like them to cover 2.5. I think they're
All
going to
right.
win by 14 or more.
Oh, well, dang.
I'm
All
telling.
right.
I
All
think it
right.
is going to be a handily victory.
Dang.
I'm putting money on it
All right.
tonight at 2.5.
I,
It's going to go up. It's going to go up. I bet it
all
closes at three and a
right.
half, 4.5. I'm taking Georgia 2.5.
I mean, I'll be honest. I like my guts tell me Georgia. I mean, just like you said, they've proven it so many times.
Mhm.
The big key for me though is I think if Carson Beck turns the ball over a couple like you said in those spurts,
Right.
if he does that again, I think Ole Miss is going to have a great chance to win this game. I
Great
mean,
point.
there's going to be no lack of motivation on both sides. This is such a huge game for Ole Miss. What they've got riding on the season, this is an elimination game for them.
Yep.
I mean, what? I mean, this is a huge game for Lane Kiffin. I mean, he needs a. He's had some good wins over LSU, like last year stuff, but to me, he really hasn't had that big signature win, like that
Right.
top five, that elite caliber win. This is his opportunity to get one. Georgia coming into Oxford. I mean, I think this is the prime opportunity. If you're going to get one, this is the one to get. That Alabama Georgia hump has been so big, he just hasn't been able to get over that. This is the opportunity, I think. Like I said, my guts tell me Georgia because so many times you see them maybe a lackluster performance here. We know how they can get locked into these games. But I think if Carson Bell, like I said, if he has that quarter or that half where he makes a couple boneheaded interceptions, turns the ball over multiple times, I think Ole Miss wins the game if that is the case. Um, but I'm going to lean on the side of I think he takes better care of the football. I do think this D line from Ole Miss can cause some issues. I
Hmm.
mean, they can
Hmm.
wreak some havoc on you.
For sure.
Don't think Georgia's offensive line's been as good as what we've seen. Struggled at times a bit. Uh, I'm going to lean Georgia in a close one,
Okay.
being in Oxford. But like I said, it's just kind of one of those situations where I just got to go with more the proven commodity of a team
Okay.
I've
So it
seen
being
do it.
close, do you think Georgia covers? Like you think it's a field goal win, or you think it's like a late touchdown to win by one?
Yeah, I'll take them to win and cover.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
it's a one possession. I do think they cover. I just think there's so much riding on it for Ole Miss, it being at Oxford. Um, if they can force a turnover or two. I mean, not to say. I mean, Carson Beck threw three picks at Texas and they won by 15. So
Yeah.
that's not to say they couldn't do that again. I just you're really playing with fire, turn the ball over multiple times and hoping to win the SEC. So
Right.
I think that's a key to the game. I think if Beck turns it over a couple times, I think Ole Miss has got a really really good shot to win. If they play clean football though, I think Georgia wins. Still think it's going to be relatively close. I think you're going to get Ole Miss's best shot here, or I would expect. Um, but Kirby will have his guys ready to go, after last week and not necessarily playing to that standard that they set there. It's going to be a great matchup in Oxford. One of the games of the weekend, as you highlighted, can't wait to watch this matchup with so much on the line for both teams.
And then there's not really a whole lot to cover on this game, in my opinion. Florida, Texas. Texas is a 21.5 point favorite. I think Texas is going to cover. Texas is coming off a bye week. Florida's coming off a huge emotional rivalry game. They're out without DJ Lagway. They're having to play Aiden Warner. The recipe is not looking good for Florida. I just think that offensively, they're not going to be anywhere where they need to be to move the ball against this Texas defense. So I like Texas to win this game big. If you have something that you feel like is worth covering and diving into on this game, go ahead. I just personally don't think that there's going to be a whole lot Florida can do with their quarterback situation.
Yeah, and the big thing too is they've had some other key injuries too. Montrell Johnson was out.
Yeah.
Trey Wilson was out in the Georgia game as well. So it was impressive what DJ Lagway was doing in that game until he got hurt. Them having the lead when he was in there. I do think this game would have been interesting with him healthy.
Right.
I
100%.
agree though with him out and some of the other injuries that they have, just a wounded Florida team coming in here. Um, yeah, I don't see them hanging around in this game at all. Like I said, would have had the potential to be pretty interesting
Mm.
had they been more at full strength. DJ Lagway being in there, maybe some other pieces as well. But yeah, with them out, I don't
If
see
it was
them
a
scoring.
if DJ was playing, it'd probably be a 2 touchdown line, not a 3 touchdown line.
Yeah, I think it could have had the potential to be pretty interesting had
Mhm.
he been in here. But yeah, I agree with your analysis. I think with him being out, them being as banged up as they are, I just can't see them scoring enough to hang in this game
Right.
super long.
And then another great game that's going to happen: South Carolina, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's hosting South Carolina. South Carolina's coming off a huge game. Vanderbilt's coming off a big win on the road. Um, this is a game that I'm staying away from when it comes to betting. But we just saw what South Carolina was able to do with a dual threat quarterback. However, Pavia is so different in how he uses his legs and arms. When I we've got a very, very, very small sample size of Marcel Reed. So I'm not acting like this is just I know everything about his game. But when you've watched Marcel Reed play the last 2 weeks or the 4 games we've seen him play this year, when he takes off running, he is going to run. There's no I'm going to pull it up and throw it here. And when he's going to throw the pass, he might take off running. But when he takes off and tucks the ball, he's gone. Diego is so good at taking off his legs, giving you a little pump fake like he's going to throw it, getting you in the air, and he'll take off, get a 7, 8 yard gain, or he'll roll out and then he'll find a guy open down the field and he'll lob it down there. He's so good at breaking down the defense when they've got him stopped and just creating something out of nothing. I think he's going to give South Carolina problems. And that's why I would be to say if you are going to bet this game, go with the game total. Over 45.5. I think there's going to be some fireworks in this game. I think South Carolina's offense has found their stride. I think they're going to score points. If I'm not mistaken, they've scored 21 or more in every game except for one. And yes, they have scored 21 or more in every game except for against Ole Miss. They scored 3 there. Other than that, the lowest they've scored so far is 25, and that was against, or excuse me, 23 in week 1, but 25 that was against Alabama. So I like the over to be had in this game. Vandy is averaging, I think, 20 and a half points a game. So 45 and a half, I like the over to hit in this game if you're going to bet on it.
Yeah, I don't have a great feeling on the game as far as I do think it's going to be a really interesting matchup with this South Carolina defensive front against this option offense of Vandy with Diego Pavia. That's going to be a really, that's going to be a crazy good matchup. Can South Carolina kind of keep their discipline up front, not get, I think too being overly aggressive against this offense can hurt you a little bit because you have to keep your discipline, keep contained on the edge, and not give them not lose contain and let them
Right.
get to the perimeter on you. That's going to be really interesting to watch. I just have so much respect for the South Carolina D line. Dylan Stewart, Kyle Kennard, they're the ones that get all the headlines. But I tell you what, Tonka Hemingway at defensive tackle, man, he's had a really good season, man. He's caused a lot of disruption himself. So I think he's a guy that's benefiting from those edge rushers, and I'm sure they're benefiting from him as well. So I think they all play really well together. Um, I'm gonna lean South Carolina. I think
Okay. Okay.
if I
You
had to
cover?
make a pick,
Cover?
but honestly, I don't know. I'm not touching this total to be honest with you. I'm just making a prediction just because, but I don't. I really don't have a good feel on the line. I'm not betting it whatsoever, but if I'm making a prediction, I'm gonna lean South Carolina slightly, just because I like what I've seen from them on their defensive front, the way they can run the football. Um, but I don't pick it with a ton of confidence. It's gonna be a great game there in Nashville.
Absolutely. And then after this, we can go touch the other games. But the game of the week, honestly, it's been the game of the week every time it's been played the last 6, 7 years, it seems. Alabama travels to LSU to take on the Bengal Tigers. Um, both these teams are they're playing for, to stay alive. Whoever loses this game, they're out of it. There's no college football playoff in their future, not this season. Still, some things to play for, but the loser of this game will have 3 losses, and that will write them out of the SEC championship and the college football playoffs. So a lot going into this game, a lot like the Georgia Ole Miss game. There's going to be no getting your guys amped up for this game. There's going to be no having to make sure your guys are focused. These are the games that everybody goes to these schools to play. These are what you play college football for. These are what Saturdays are built on. This is what makes college football and SEC football the best. Is games like this with these implications on them. They're championship games in the middle of the season, basically. I have no idea what to expect, to be honest with you. This could be a fireworks show, 35-38 shootout, but it could also be a 21-14 slugfest where they just, knocking each other out for all game, or 14-7 slugfest. I could see it going either way. The line is Bama favorite at 2.5, over under 58.5. I would say under, just play the under is what I would say, just because we know how much I love Nussmeier, but what he has shown us this year, without a doubt, he's going to throw it to the other team at times. He is not afraid to take chances. He is going to throw the ball 45, 50 times a game. One or two of those is probably going to be caught by Alabama. So that's why I would say go with the under if you're going to bet this game. I would say I would take LSU to cover just because it's at LSU. Don't necessarily think that LSU is going to win. I do think it's going to be a very close game. I think they're going to be trading blows all night, whether it be 2 touchdowns or 20 touchdowns. I think they're going to be trading blows and matching each other all night. That's usually just how these type of games go out. I mean, you look at last year, Bama ended up pulling away late and winning pretty comfortably. But for early on, the first 3 quarters, they were pretty much trading blows and just matching each other, drive for drive, whatever was going on. So I think it's going to be a lot like that. These games, this game particularly, always seems to be that way. It's never a bad game. If I was to bet, I'm staying away from this game completely because this is one of the ones that's like anything can happen and I'm not going to be shocked. I would say that I would take LSU just to give a pick, but I'm staying away from it. But I would take LSU to cover just because it's at Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your assessment of the fact I have no idea what's going to happen in this game. I don't have a good feel at all. I don't think any outcome would surprise me that much. You said it perfectly though. It's an elimination game. Everybody in the country knows it. Alabama knows it. LSU knows it. The fan bases know it. Everybody associated with college football and fans know it. Slap a college football playoff logo on this game. I mean,
Yep.
that's what it is. It's a
Yep.
playoff game on November the 9th. I mean, it 100% is. When you get that second loss now, I mean, it's do or die the rest of the way. I mean, if whoever wins this game, if they win out, they're very likely going to be in the college football playoff.
Yep.
Loser, they're done. Flip them off the grill, done. Season over. Still got games left, but you're not going to the playoffs. Yeah, I mean it's do or die for both these teams. And that's the thing, that's what people thought with the 12-team playoff. They're like, is it going to take away from the regular season? How's that dynamic going to work? Man, I'll be honest, I know it's easy to say a team that's with 2 losses and that's right on the borderline of being in or out of the playoff, man. I just feel it ratchet up that much more, man. I mean, that's how I feel about it, man. I feel like this game's just as big if they were rated number 1 and number 2, honestly.
100%.
I think in this game, like I said, don't have a great feel. I mean, it did give me a little confidence the way A&M was able to run the ball. With Marcel Reed with their running backs. I do think LSU is going to be in a much better place, though, having time to prepare for it this time, not being caught off guard. I mean, they know with Jalen Milroe, what he can do with his legs. I think the bye week was good for him as well as I've been saying, I don't think he's 100%. They're not going to come out and say it. But he just hasn't quite looked himself. So I do think this bye week was very, very beneficial from that standpoint.
I've also
Um,
heard some Bama fans complain that they feel in the same way the Auburn fans do that their running backs aren't getting enough touches, and they maybe here and there, but they feel like they're not using them enough. Is that the same way you feel? And do you think that that is the difference in this game that they're going to have to lean on their running backs in this game to be successful?
yeah, I mean, I've definitely felt that as well. I think
Mhm.
that's why the Missouri game, the way they were able to run the
Mhm.
football in that game, I think alleviated some people's concerns a little bit.
Mhm.
You know, like man, that was the breakout game from our running backs that we have been waiting to see for pretty much all season.
Right.
So I think that did give people some confidence going into the bye week. I think the team themselves, I think it gives them a lot of confidence.
Mhm.
I think seeing the way A&M was able to run the ball, I think had to give you a little bit of confidence as well. Because I'll be honest, that first quarter against A&M with LSU, I was scared to absolute death because I was like, man, they're firing on all cylinders right now. Like you said, I think it's going to be critical that they can get a couple turnovers off Garrett Nussmeier. I mean, like you said, that's the thing though, man. He's gonna get his in this game.
Yeah.
He's gonna get his yards. He's gonna sling the ball. But I think for me, I'm gonna lean Alabama due to the fact that I think Alabama can run the football a little bit better
Mhm.
than LSU can. LSU's for most of the year has struggled to run the
Yeah.
ball. You know, Brian Kelly said it after the A&M game. We're really unbalanced right now. We got to help Garrett Nussmeier out and give him a balanced
Yeah.
offense because it's unfair to ask him to do everything. Um, I think what I've seen from Alabama in that Missouri game against a good Missouri defense, I saw more balance. Like I said, this is going to be a insanely close game. Being in Baton Rouge, it's going to be an incredible environment. Alabama did not handle the environment well at Tennessee at all, so that's definitely a concern for me. But due to the fact Alabama can run the ball better, I believe I'm going to lean slightly. But as you said, I'm not picking this game. I'm not putting a dime on it. I don't I don't feel confident either which way, and I'm not really sure what to expect. But I'm gonna lean with a team that I think can run the football a little bit better. I think maybe with LSU being a little more pass happy, being a little more unbalanced, I think they can get a turnover or two possibly, and that's gonna be key. If he doesn't turn over the ball, I like it. I like LSU's chances a lot, but I think they can maybe get an interception or two off of him. Um, yeah, it's going to be a great game, man. I mean, elimination game November 9th in Baton Rouge, Saturday night in the SEC. I mean, that's why we call this Saturdays in the SEC. What more could you want? I mean,
100%.
what more could you want, man? Saturday night, Death Valley with the season on the line. I mean, doesn't get any bigger than that to me. So, uh,
Absolutely.
can't wait. It's going to be a heck of a game. And man, what a slate though between Georgia, Ole Miss, Bama, LSU. Heck, even with South Carolina, Vandy. Uh, man, so it's gonna be a heck of a Saturday, man. I mean, we had a little bit of a chaos Saturday around the country this past weekend with quite a few ranked teams going down, and we could we could have a few more wrenches in the SEC plans this weekend. So it's
Absolutely. And
gonna
I want
be
to get your thoughts on these last two games this weekend. So Mississippi State is going to Tennessee, take on the Vols. Tennessee's a 23.5 point favorite. The over-under is 61.5. I tell you this, I am going to bet this game, and I'm betting the Bulldogs to cover. You're telling me Tennessee is 4 touchdowns better than Mississippi State. I'm calling BS. This Mississippi State team, to be as bad and out of it as they've been since week 4, but there's been realistically nothing to play for them. They have played their asses off every single Saturday that they go out there to play. These guys are not giving up. They're able to put points on the board. They're able to move the football. Their offense is not horrible. They just don't have all the guys. They're going to be able to put points on this Tennessee team. Kentucky was able to move the ball. Mississippi State is going to be able to move the ball. Lebby is great offensively. He's one of the best offensive minds in college football. They're going to find a way to move the ball and get points. Tennessee, like I said, there's some pretenders right now. They're struggling offensively to just dominate. I think they're going to win for sure. They'll probably win by 3 touchdowns. Excuse me. I just don't think they cover. I don't think that there are 3 touchdowns and a field goal better than Mississippi State. I just don't see it happening. The way Mississippi State's been playing recently, the way Tennessee's been putting up points recently, or the lack of putting up points, I think Mississippi State covers. I think Tennessee wins for sure, handily, but I like Mississippi State to keep it within the 23.5.
I do as well. I like State to keep it within the points. I think with Tennessee's offense not really hitting on all cylinders
Right,
either. I mean, this isn't a team that's winning with style points right now. I
right.
mean, now this is a defense. Like this is a defense you should click against.
Uh-huh.
But I think too, with it being, they got that road trip to Georgia the very next week, could be a little bit of a look ahead spot. Like I said, I think Tennessee wins comfortably, but the way State has fought and what they can do offensively a little bit, I do think they keep it within the number. But I mean, Tennessee wins I believe for sure. But yeah, I like this State team to really fight and keep it. And I think you could see that number go up a little bit. Like I see it on one side right now at 24. So,
Okay.
so that could be a number. You look at it and go, yeah, Tennessee probably blow them out. Like I think that's one that you may can get a little better value later in the week, possibly if you like State. Don't know that for sure, but that's one I could see maybe creeping up a little bit. So if you like State, it's definitely a line to keep an eye on. But especially at plus 24, I really like it there a lot too.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
State fights with it.
100%. All right, and then the final game, the SEC slate this coming weekend, week 11. Oklahoma travels to Missouri, take on the Tigers. Missouri 6-2, Oklahoma 5-4. Missouri's a 2.5 point favorite. The over/under is 42.5. I'll be honest. I think Missouri covers. I think they win this game. Oklahoma defensively, man, they're great. They are really good defensively, but they can only be that good for so long because they're constantly asked to be on the field. I mean, Oklahoma's offense is one of the worst offenses in college football. They're in like the bottom 120 or something like that. They are not good offensively. Defensively, they are great. Offensively, they are very, very bad. They've struggled all year. They just had a big win against Maine this past weekend, but that's what they were supposed to do against them. Missouri's not, what we've talked about them. They're nothing to, hang your hat on. They're not just dominant, but they find a way to get the job done. I like Missouri to beat Oklahoma. I like them to cover 2.5. I think they win by a touchdown or more.
I think for me, it all depends on. Um, I think it just depends on Brady Cook's health. I think if he's playing and relatively healthy, I think Missouri wins. If Drew Pine's playing, I'm fading the hell out of Missouri. Give me Oklahoma, dude. I'm telling
That's
you, I
fair.
got no if Drew Pine is starting this game, they're not beating Oklahoma.
That's
I
fair.
really believe that. Now Brady Cook's playing, I'm with you. I'm riding Missouri. If Brady Cook is playing and healthy, like a healthy Brady Cook, I think so. Drew Pine against this Oklahoma defense will be nightmares. Honestly,
That's fair.
I'll be honest. I mean, I will gladly come on here next week and eat my words if he proves me wrong. I will gladly give Drew Pine his flowers.
It
But
ain't happening.
until he does, I'm riding with what I'm saying right now. If he's starting against this, hammer them Sooners.
Okay.
I will say they got a little bit more confidence. They beat the Maine Bears. They put more points on Maine than I thought they would. I'm not gonna lie.
They
I,
put what,
I
49 or something?
yeah, I kind of like Maine to cover, and they scored 14. So I was like, okay, you know, yeah, they ended up winning what 59-14.
Oh,
So
59, not 49.
yeah, so pretty impressive. I mean, shoot, they covered the 36 and a half. If you would have told me Maine was going to score 14, I'd have hammered that. Um, So I think they are. Jackson Arnold's back in the lineup. Even against Ole Miss, I thought, considering where they were, I mean, it was slight improvements.
Yeah.
A little bit more of a spark. I'm with you though. I think this bye week though, with Missouri getting, should give Brady Cook some time to get healthy a little bit. I do think if he's playing, I think Missouri wins, but I I can't in good faith put any money and or any of my faith on Drew Pine if he's in this ball game against this Oklahoma defense. It's bad, man. It's bad.
He is bad.
So
You're right.
we'll see. Yeah, Drew Pine's starting. I'm leaning Sooners. To me, my pick is pending Missouri's quarterback health. That's what my pick is like. That.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about the Penn State Ohio State before
Okay.
we
Okay.
wrap up. Big Penn State man had their opportunities in this game. Get inside the five, I believe, twice. Late in the game, stopped fourth and goal on the one. Could have tied the game with about 5 minutes and change left. James Franklin, man, just cannot get over that Ohio State or
Or
Michigan hump.
Michigan. Yeah.
To be honest with you, I believe he's which in I will
One in
say,
six, or they're 1-26 against top five teams since 2000 or something like that.
yeah, I believe he is 1-14 against
Hmm.
top five teams at Penn State. I think that Fox said that on the broadcast. I will say in his defense, I mean, honestly, he's not supposed to win those games because I
Right.
mean, every time they've played, like Michigan and Ohio State have been the more talented team. So I mean, it's like I know he gets a lot of heat, and some of it's deserved. I mean, I'm not saying it's not, but I do think in 95% of the cases, or maybe even 100, um, I mean he's been the second most talented team on the field in those games. So I mean, you can't really Josh Pate makes this point all the time. He has people coming at him all the time saying James Franklin's the most overrated coach in the game. And his comeback's always, well, what is he rated? Like, what is he rated to be considered overrated? Like, yeah, if you're putting him in top five college football coaches, then yeah, he is overrated. But nobody's doing that. So,
Right.
um, yeah, I mean, I understand the hate from Penn State fans. I do think too, this was his best opportunity to get them though. Like this is one, if he was gonna get them, I think this was the time because I don't think Ohio State's really clicked on all cylinders this year, even with the roster they've had. Uh, this was huge for Ryan Day though, man. He couldn't afford to drop this one, man. You want to talk about pitchforks coming after somebody,
Yeah.
which is it's crazy to say because the dude's only lost like 7 games since he's been there. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but it just
One of them
shows you
being a
the
playoff game.
expectations. Um, that Ohio State has, especially with this roster. I mean, this is a $20 million roster here, so um, the expectations are ramped up that much more to win a national championship. So they really had to have this one. But yeah, from James Franklin's perspective, I mean, it's disappointing for them not to get this one because you felt like there was a golden opportunity there to kind of take this game.
What was your
Uh,
thoughts on the pass on fourth down at the 1 yard line instead of trying to, you know, run it in there? When you're Penn State, you're built on we run the ball. What was your thoughts on going with the pass play there at the end?
I mean, per obviously hindsight's 2020, and
Mhm.
you go back. I mean, I would have ran it there. I think with them, but they just ran it a couple times. Got stuffed. I mean, Ohio State's really good in the interior of the defensive line, and they got some guys. The Talamalu, I think is how you say his name. Jack Sawyer. Like they've got some studs up front. So I don't know if they would have got it in running it. To be honest with you, but yeah, I honestly kind of thought they would throw it there because they got stuffed a couple times. I would have kept the ball in my back's hands because, like you said, that's what they're built on. So I wasn't surprised with the call, but yeah, man, a couple times they just got in the goal line, like you've seen so many times, man. Driving down the field, you got to be able to finish against some of these good teams, man. Red zone execution, it's critical, in these big games. But wasn't surprised, but yeah, I would have kept it in my back's hands. Like you said, considering that's what Penn State's built on. Well, thank everyone for tuning in. Going to be a wild November, so keep it locked in with us here. I think we're in for one of the craziest finishes we've ever seen to the college football season with the regular season, conference title games, and conference title races and the playoffs. Really, really interested to see the initial college football playoff rankings on Tuesday night. Um, Give us a good snapshot of where everybody stands here, especially after kind of a chaotic week too. So I'm really curious to where they have some of these teams ranked, especially teams that are like 10 through 15 or 16, like how they
Yeah,
settle some of those 2-loss teams. Obviously, being an Alabama fan, that's really interesting to me to kind of see where they're, where they stack up going into this LSU game down the stretch, along with, teams like Clemson, like LSU, like Ole Miss, like a one-loss Iowa State. Now, how they kind of shake those out, I think will be very telling. But be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate that, and hope you guys have a great week and enjoy week 11 of college football.
absolutely. Thank you guys.